The next section of the philosophy of the body is entitled The Objectified, Negative Consequences. Instead of rallying against it upon toleration, people may attempt to use it to their own advantage. No human being on this earth most desires the kind of attention produced by their self-objectification, irrespective of their desires. No human being on earth most desires the kind of tension produced by their apparent self-objectification against their intentions. The creation of objectification in the media is not an enjoyable or comfortable experience for the objectified. Even more explicit forms, where they know what is going on, would not wish to be created for arbitrary persons without monetary incentive. People who engage in apparent self-objectification don't realize how attractive their objectification really is. It almost always results in psychological damage, repression of some kind or another. Attraction of apparent self-objectification can only be modified by desensitization, e.g., through objectification in the media. The psychological effect of being objectified through the acceptance of or response to one's apparent self-objectification and the psychological effect of witnessing objectification are the same. Both lead to either discomfort or addiction, subconscious acceptance of illusion and desensitization. The ultimate fate of the objectified person is suicide. Those who have had themselves objectified will not always appreciate it afterward. Objectification may involve and/or result in embarrassment of the objectified, where one does not wish other people to see themselves as an object without subjective significance. To be objectified against one's will, or for one to think that they are being objectified against their will, claims the strongest denial of their subjective significance, and is therefore the most powerful form of objectification, most convincing to their subconscious, and most in support of self-objectification. To falsely subjectify, accuse someone based upon a false deterministic model of reality is the most damaging form of objectification. To have one's subjective significance, innocence, denied at an early age makes it far more likely that one will become involved in objectification. Objectification relies upon the goodwill of the objectified in the showing of respect without prejudice to their instructors, e.g. corporations, rather than examining their nature first, addicts and dealers. Without goodwill, objectification would not operate, as those responsible for their objectification would be shunned and outcast. People involved in apparent self-objectification are more likely to be seen alone, not accepting their own and other people's subjective significance. The objectified are more likely to objectify others, in particular people belonging to a category of human beings responsible for their objectification, having experienced a lack of subjective significance in these persons, which in turn results in their further objectification. Denying someone's subjective significance has exactly the same effect as an experience of objectification, e.g. ignoring them, their good intentions, or being silent. The natural reaction to being objectified is the subconscious acceptance of objectification and the application of follow-on logic, counter-objectification. The proper human reaction to being objectified oneself is to hate, as the objectified has a good understanding of their subjective self. An alternative human reaction to being objectified may be to love, where the objectified believes they have a good understanding of why or how the other person was led to objectify them. The desire to objectify is of itself natural, although it may often result from experience of inhumane circumstances. The correct, only real response to a desire to objectify is still love. A curse is a special case of objectification in that it is a conscious denial of another person's subjective significance, used to help one deal with their involvement in the objectification of others, or to enable the cursed to address their involvement in the objectification of others. When objectification becomes tolerated, an explicit curse loses its unique value, considering the implicit curse persists regardless. The proper response to a desire to objectify someone is to like that person. However, when we are encouraged to objectify them, the proper response is not to like that person. There is no proper response. Those who have had their selves objectified are more likely to misinterpret another's intentions. Apparent self-objectification for self-objectification, holding another's hand for objectification, holding another to dance for objectification, etc. An objectified person is more sensitive to the emulation of objectification, or actions which mimic objectification, but are not necessarily objectification. Apparent self-objectification for objectification, touch for objectification, etc. It encourages belief systems which both participate in the objectification of others and modify requirements for moral human interaction. Willing involvement in objectification can become an addiction, as one begins to define themselves based upon their ability to give pleasure. Apparent self-objectification may be a consequence of sexual addiction, or to be objectified or desired. Objectification theoretically allows sex to be separated from love. It may create a scenario where fashion is modified to the extent that it becomes confined to, reliant upon, a particular culture having no other place or time in the world. The objectified are uncomfortable around good people. The objectified need to subjectify themselves around good people, thereby honouring them, possibly even attracting them on a subjective basis. Objectification may be tolerated out of desire to be honoured, or out of desire to be friends with the objectified. Objectification may be tolerated because one does not want others of the opposite sex feeling uncomfortable by talking about things specific to one's own sex, which they, by their very nature, don't understand. The objectified may wish to start talking or communicating around other people. An apparent self-objectified person, upon encountering another human being, may perform body or head movements out of consciousness of their apparent objectification in order to direct another's attention to their face or subjective significance, e.g. lean to the side, tilt their head, smile, etc. Objectification, of its very nature, knows no boundaries in age, apart from that which is physically sustainable, being in denial of subjective significance. Some forms of apparent self-objectification may attempt to emulate youth without boundary in one's body. It is difficult for an objectified person to sustain a relationship because they have already given themselves away, or have been given away, are giving themselves away, or are being given away to other people. It may be difficult for an objectified person to sustain a relationship because of sexual addiction. Involvement in apparent self-objectification limits our capacity to give ourselves away as a subject.